Rye knew he should go to bed, but instead, he clicked on another story about a cheating wife. Were these stories real? Could people actually do these things to someone they loved? The stories burrowed into Rye's mind, planting seeds of doubt and suspicion. He found himself watching his wife, Pamela, more closely, analyzing her every move and interaction. When they went out dancing, he bristled if she got too close to other men. He rifled through laundry baskets, searching for signs of betrayal. Rye had met Pamela at her sister Sai's wedding. Little did he know that the couple getting married were swingers. Rye and Pamela hit it off immediately and got married just a year later. Kyle came along the next year, followed by Kayla 2 years after that. On the surface, they had the perfect little family, but Rye and Pamela's different work shifts meant they rarely saw each other. Then there was Sandy and her husband, Bob, wild party animals with a rumored swinger lifestyle. Rye had never liked Bob, especially after catching him flirting with Pamela at their own wedding reception. He and Pamela had agreed never to discuss past relationships. They were both the jealous type. One day, Pamela asked if Rye could fix Sai's leaky kitchen sink. "Sure, I can take a look," Rye replied with a smirk. "Maybe I can do some plumbing while I'm there." Pamela's eyes flashed. "Don't even think about it, mister. That's my sister you're talking about." Rye held up his hands in mock surrender. "Relax, I'm just kidding." But as he headed out the door, he couldn't help but wonder about Sandy and Bob's rumored exploits. Sandy had always been a shameless flirt, even with Rye, but he knew better than to risk his marriage over a fling with his sister-in-law. When Rye arrived at Sai's house, she greeted him at the door wearing nothing but a flimsy bathrobe. "Come on in," she purred. "Coffee's on if you want some." Rye's mouth went dry. "Ah, thanks. I'll just take a look at that sink in the kitchen." Rye bent down to examine the pipes under the sink. When he stood up, Sandy was right behind him, her robe hanging open. "What are you doing?" Sandy asked, advancing on him. "I'm just here to fix the sink," Rye stammered, backing away. "This isn't right." Sai's eyes narrowed. "Are you going to sleep with me or not?" "No, absolutely not. Pamela's your sister, for Christ's sake. I love her." "Fine," Sandy spat. "Have it your way, but if you don't give me what I want, I'll tell Pamela you tried to force yourself on me. Who do you think she'll believe?" Rye bolted from the house. He tried calling Pamela but got no answer. At work that night, he could barely focus, his thoughts consumed by Sai's threat and what it might mean for his marriage. When Rye got home the next morning, Sai's car was in the driveway. Inside, he found Bob hastily pulling up his pants, Sandy smirking from the couch, and Pamela looking scared and very drunk. "What the hell is going on here?" Rye roared. He lunged at Bob, fists flying. In the chaos that followed, someone hit Rye from behind, and everything went black. Rye woke up in the hospital with a pounding headache. A police officer stood by his bed, explaining that Rye had a concussion from being hit with a vase. Apparently, charges against Rye had been dropped. Bob claimed self-defense, saying Rye had come home in a rage and attacked him. Pamela remembered little, just Rye yelling. The whole situation was a mess, far from what Rye had expected when he'd left for Sai's that morning. "I have nothing to say," Rye told the officer. "You're lucky, Mr. Harper," the cop replied. "No charges filed, but I suggest you think long and hard about your actions." After the officer left, Rye's head throbbed, both from the injury and from trying to make sense of what had happened. He couldn't live with a cheater, but he needed answers. He called his sister, Amy, to come pick him up. Just then, his phone rang. It was Pamela. "Do you want me to come get you? We need to talk now that we're even." Rye's blood boiled. "Even? You slept with Bob? Amy's coming to get me," Rye said. "I'll grab my stuff and leave." "Leave?" Pamela cried. "I was just getting even for what you did with Sandy." "At home?" Rye confronted Pamela. "Sandy told me you forced yourself on her." Pamela said accusingly, "That's a lie." Rye shot back. "She came on to me and threatened to lie if I didn't sleep with her. I left immediately." Pamela's eyes flashed with anger and hurt. "Why should I believe you? Why would my own sister lie about that?" "Because she's jealous," Rye exclaimed. "She and Bob are swingers. They wanted to get you involved. You let Bob have you, and as far as I'm concerned, our marriage is over." "No, I only did it to get even," Pamela protested. "Sandy knew details about what happened between you two." Rye's face twisted in disgust. "Your sister's nothing but a—" "I slept with her back in high school, just like half the guys in town," Pamela interrupted. But that was years ago, before I even met you. Pamela's eyes welled with tears. I don't know what to believe anymore. This isn't just about Bob, Rye said coldly. It's about trust. If I'd really raped Sandy, why didn't she go to the police? Face it, Pamela, you wanted Bob, and you used me as an excuse. No, Rye, I love you, Pamela sobbed. Love doesn't include sleeping with other people, Rye spat. I'm filing for divorce on Monday. Wait, this isn't how it was supposed to happen. Pamela cried. Rye ignored her pleas as he packed a suitcase. Tell the kids whatever you want. I don't want to see or speak to you. Amy can arrange visits with Kyle and Kayla. The weeks that followed were a blur of overtime shifts and cheap motels as Rye tried to get his life back on track. He met with a lawyer and filed for divorce. One day, Rye picked up a sick Kyle from school. While at the house getting some of Kyle's things, the phone rang. It was Sandy. Rye hit record on his cell phone, capturing Sai's confession that she had lied about the assault and revealing Bob's involvement in the whole scheme. After Rye left with Kyle, his phone exploded with calls and texts from Pamela, apologizing profusely and begging for forgiveness. But for Rye, it was too late. Her willingness to believe the worst about him and to throw away their marriage so easily had irreparably damaged his trust. On the day the divorce was to be finalized, Rye signed the papers with a heavy heart. Afterward, he headed to a nearby bar to drown his sorrows. By chance, he spotted Bob across the room. All the anger and pain of the past months came rushing back. Rye unleashed his fury, beating Bob until he was a crumpled mess on the floor. I hope you rot in hell, you son of a... Rye shouted as three guys yanked him off Bob. He thrashed wildly as they dragged him outside, where police officers slammed him to the ground and cuffed him. This time there would be no dropped charges. Rye was headed to prison. With his one phone call, Rye contacted Amy. I really screwed up this time, sis, he said wearily. Don't bother with bail. I'm just going to do my time. He could hear Amy crying as he hung up the phone. Over the next 2 months, Pamela tried repeatedly to visit Rye in jail, but he refused to see her. When his court date arrived, Rye pled guilty to assault charges. The judge sentenced him to 2 years minus time served. Ray, Pamela still loves you, Amy insisted when she visited. Her whole family is furious about Sai's lies, and Pamela never signed the final divorce papers. You're going to jail a married man. Prison was even worse than Rye had imagined. The first 2 months were a constant struggle, landing him in the infirmary twice as he fought to prove himself. His cellmate was a lifer nicknamed Killer, rumored to have stabbed his cheating wife and her lover 80 times. He'd even killed another inmate the previous year. But eventually, things settled into a tense routine. Killer even started talking to Rye, sharing stories about his own fall from grace. On visitor day, Rye was shocked to see Pamela waiting for him. What are you doing here? Rye asked. I love you, Pamela sobbed, sliding photos of the kids across the table. I made terrible mistakes, but I'll wait for you. We can get through this if you still love me. Rye stood and walked away without a word, leaving Pamela crying at the visitor's window. That night, Rye overheard other inmates plotting to attack Killer. Wary of being labeled a snitch, Rye felt compelled to warn his cellmate. Killer eyed Rye suspiciously, but took precautions. The next day, Killer outsmarted his would-be attacker by hiding books under his shirt, deflecting the makeshift knife. Killer's crew swarmed the attacker, beating him severely before guards intervened. Through it all, Killer calmly finished his dinner as if nothing might be. After Ray and Anna decided to marry in prison, preparations for the ceremony began. With the necessary arrangements and cooperation from the prison authorities, they were able to schedule the wedding inside the facility. On the wedding day, Anna arrived at the prison in a simple yet elegant dress, accompanied by a few close family members. The ceremony was held in a modest but heartfelt manner. Despite the challenging circumstances, the event was filled with joy and comfort for both Anna and Ray. Anna's father, despite his illness, was able to attend the wedding, which was a deeply emotional and significant moment for Anna. She cherished the chance to reconnect with her father in person, despite the difficult situation. Following the wedding, Ray and Anna began their new life together. Ray worked on rebuilding his life with the support of his family and new connections. He also made efforts to maintain a positive and stable relationship with his children. Anna and Ray were ready to start this new chapter of their lives. Despite the challenges they faced, they found solace and strength in each other and the support they had received.